flow, no misdemeanor. That street sweeper gon' make it cleaner. Shoot reality out of my cage, spray it until I hit a dreamer. Think you're stopping me from copping platinum plaques, better switch your scheme up. I'ma hop out my seat as quick as every guest on Jerry Springer. Y'all always talking about keep it real, that's something that I ain't really got to say. That's every day, hustle like Rick in the MIA. You know you don't wanna play with the modern day Cassius Clay, cause I make hits and those that don't will always rip and pass away. That mean you will R.I.P. Wannabes is all I see. No one got more buzz than me, all I be is Bumblebee. That number one spot that you got my hoe and you in love with her, ain't ya? If you see it and you feel like you can take her, take her.
Hakeem Sariki, aka Chamillionaire, would be born in Washington, D.C. in November of 1979. While he was born on the East Coast, his family would move down south to Houston, Texas, where he grew up. About his childhood, Cam would say, "I had to deal with the same struggles that any other low-income family child growing up. Domestic violence and my mom working 2 jobs to maintain were some of the type of things that I was dealing with. There used to be a lot of tension between the North 7 South side of Houston for a while, but that was a phase that kind of disappeared." Growing up, Chamillionaire fell in love with rap music early on, even though rap wasn't really played in his household. He never realized that he was going to be able to do it for a living until he started making a lot of money doing it later on in life. Chamillionaire would grow up alongside fellow rapper Paul Wall, with both of their careers being heavily linked together. Here's a clip of Paul Wall and Chamillionaire talking about their come up together. This clip is from around 2001, I believe.
P, how you hook up with everybody, how everything gets started?
Man, me and Chamillionaire, you know what I'm saying, we started off as water boys in the game, man. We was passing out flyers, you know what I'm saying, we was DJing, throwing parties, man, we did everything. We used to be the bouncers at the club, the doorman, you know what I'm saying, taking the door stuff. But really, man, what we was really hot on was promotions, man. We was the water boys, man. You know what I'm saying, we started at the bottom and worked our way up to the top. That's how we got in cool with Watts, and you know what I'm saying, we of course rap, we did our own thing, and then, you know what I'm saying, good mind thinks alike, you know what I'm saying. You know how the fairy tale goes. You know, great minds think alike. We came together, collaborated with Watts, and you know, one thing led to another, and it was like, you know what I'm saying, Bill Gates, you know what I'm saying? What's up? You don't want to say it. We took over the game.
Y'all tell the truth.
That's what happened, man. We took over the game.
So as you heard, pretty much they both had to work from the ground up in the industry. They hosted parties, were bouncers, passed out flyers, and did a bunch of other stuff to get in the door. They were doing things for Master P's No Limit Records at a point in time, and eventually they went on to work for Michael Watts' Swishahouse label. While working for Swishahouse, Chamillionaire watched his surroundings and used what he saw as a learning process. He took this and knew how to get money when he eventually left Swishahouse. He learned how to stand on his own 2 feet and not to depend on anyone but himself. So at first, when Paul and Chamillionaire were on Swishahouse, they were doing everything but rap. They were both rapping at the time, but didn't think that they could land on a Swishahouse tape, which were very popular back in the day. It was definitely a big deal to be on one of these tapes, which would have been a huge look for both of them at the time. Paul Wall and Chamillionaire were in a group called the Sleepwalkers, which predates the Color Changing Clique, which came after. But in 1999, after listening to Paul and Cam's demo, Michael Watts would record some songs and started putting them on Swishahouse mixtapes. By the way, Michael Watts is a co-founder of Swishahouse, which is a legendary Texas-based independent music label. Here's a snippet of some material Chamillionaire did on Swishahouse.
But you can't tell, just look at the ice in my bezel. My bread is green, but it ain't stale. TV's in the 600 V12.
A little earlier, I mentioned that Chamillionaire and Paul Wall will make a demo that ended up gaining them some traction, but when they made this demo, Swishahouse wasn't an official label yet. Millionaire would elaborate on this. When I was in the Swishahouse, it wasn't really a label at that time. It was kind of like a bunch of rappers spitting on screwed mixtapes. I never saw any contracts at all. We were never signed. That's the reason why we were able to start our own thing when our street buzz was hot enough. I got tired of watching all the money get made and not being able to financially profit from it. I was told that I had to pay dues when I was asking about getting paid for a show that I was performing in. I did hundreds of mixtape verses and a lot of shows and wasn't making money doing it, so I got out and did my own thing. No one puts a salary cap on me or tells me when I get paid now. I am thankful for the experience though, because I learned from it, but what I went through is also the reason why I separate myself from everything they got going on over there. I respect what that label did to get me where I'm at, but I'm not a sweatshop worker or a slave, and this rap is how my family eats. So since him and Paul Wall were never under contract, they ended up jumping ship to a label called Paid in Full that their friends ran and owned. Another reason for this decision to leave was that when they were both with Swishahouse, they felt like they were both bench players, so to speak, and they wanted to take matters into their own hands. So in June of 2002, Chamillionaire and Paul Wall released what I've seen many people call a classic, which is the album Get Your Mind Correct. The album peaked at number 67 on the Billboard Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart, and this album was actually nominated for Indie Album of the Year in the Source magazine. It also went on to sell over 100,000 copies independently, which is pretty impressive. Paul Wall and Chamillionaire really started to buzz off of this, but unfortunately things would soon change. This is where I heavily suggest that you go watch my video on the relationship between Chamillionaire and Paul Wall. I pretty much covered their full story together, so if you want to learn more, just watch that. But essentially, Paul Wall would end up dropping his debut album Chick Magnet in February of 2004 on Paid in Full Records. The same month that Chick Magnet dropped, Chamillionaire would drop King Koopa the Mixtape Messiah, which was an enormous mixtape containing over 60 songs spanning over 3 CDs. This mixtape is a very important project and is very pivotal to the early career of Chamillionaire. It's also how a lot of people discovered him outside of Swishahouse. He really used this mixtape to build a buzz for himself. But after the Chick Magnet album is when Paul Wall went back to Swishahouse, and now things at Swishahouse were way different. Swishahouse had just signed Mike Jones and Magnificent. However, Chamillionaire would not return to Swishahouse, and instead he would start his own company called Chamillionaire Entertainment. Chamillionaire was very outspoken about this decision and said that he wanted to be a boss. He did not want to sign to a label and have someone tell him how much money that he could make. He said that Michael Watts, who co-founded Swishahouse, makes all the money and tells his artists how much money that they can make, and he did not want to do that. In an interview with Donnie Houston, Paul Wall revealed that when him and Chamillionaire signed to Paid in Full, they signed a 5-album deal, 2 collab albums between him and Chamillionaire, 2 solo albums from both of them, and a Waterboys album with Paul Wall, Chamillionaire, 50/50, and Lou Hawk. But after the Paid in Full situation, Chamillionaire ended up getting a deal with Universal Records. Before Universal, he almost signed with Sony. He would be at the CEO of Sony's house, and Chamillionaire would tell him that he was making almost $10,000 a show. The wild part of the story is that the CEO would stand on a table and throw money on the ground and told Chamillionaire to do a show for him. The man proceeded to say that if Chamillionaire wanted plaques and to go platinum, he needed to come to the big leagues. He didn't like how Chamillionaire was talking as if he did not need a record label. I do think that it's definitely crazy that the man did that, especially with that "do a show for me" line. That just does not sit right with me at all in any way. But about the Universal deal, Chamillionaire would say, "We doing our thing in the streets of the South right now. Rasaq and 50/50 Twin are my artists, and OG Ron C is the official DJ for the label." OG Ron C was a former co-CEO of the Swishahouse, but he's doing his thing with me now. I have some new people that we are thinking of bringing on the team, but time will tell. The future for everybody depends on the success of my project. The project that he was referring to was his debut album, but prior to his debut album, we would see the release of Controversy Sales in January of 2005, which was after him and Paul left Paid in Full. This obviously did not go over well with Chamillionaire because he was going to name his debut album Controversy Sales. He said that Paid in Full knew that he was going to name his album this and try to capitalize off of the street promotion that he was doing with that title. He also wasn't too thrilled about them releasing old material and trying to fool the public as if Controversy Sales was a new album. However, months after the release of Controversy Sales, Chamillionaire would release the Chamillionaire project with the color changing click. He would also release 2 mixtapes this year, with those being The Truth from the Ground Up and the other one, of course, being Man on Fire. One thing people do have to understand is that before his debut album, Chamillionaire was already popping. In the promotional video for his debut album Sound of Revenge, he said that by that time, he had already sold over 150,000 records independently, and his website had over 3.5 million hits before he ever signed a major deal. A lot of Texas artists from back in the day already had tons of money and notoriety due to them selling their mixtapes independently. But now with Chamillionaire being signed to to a major label, it gave him the opportunity to go national, and that's exactly what he did with his debut album. Chamillionaire spoke on this in an interview and said that he did not want to sign with the major label unless the deal was completely right due to him already having a lot of success in the underground. How he even got signed to a major label was because one of the producers from the Beat Bullies, who produced 6 tracks on his debut album, called him and said that he was going to get his name on the VIP list for a Nelly party that was in New York. Chamillionaire had no intentions of going, but who went on to be Chamillionaire's manager told him that one of the head guys from Universal Records saw that Chamillionaire's name was on the list and was hoping to see him there. Now knowing this, Chamillionaire paid for a ticket to New York, but by the time he got to the party, it was almost over. After leaving the party, Chamillionaire would book a hotel, and in the morning, he woke up to a lot of missed calls from phone numbers with the New York area code. Next thing he knows, he's going from meeting to meeting with various labels. Every meeting went well except for one. Where the executives were stuck on an American Idol type concept. I didn't like the whole idea and the approach they was doing where you had to rap and dance with them. They passed on me, but I'm glad because I got the deal that people were telling me that I wasn't going to be able to get. This will conclude the first part of the video where I detailed the backstory of Chamillionaire. One thing that I did want to add but not really dive too deep into was the situation between Chamillionaire and Mike Jones. Now Mike Jones has spoken on this situation in a Say Cheese interview and said that whatever happened between him and Chamillionaire wasn't serious during whatever they had with each other, because I wouldn't go as far as to call it beef, but Chamillionaire would drop numerous disses towards Mike Jones. Disses like "you got wrecked," "game over," and "drag him in the river" with Chamillionaire's own brother Rasaq. In the future, I'm definitely eyeing doing a video on Mike Jones, so let me know in the comments if you would like that, because I could even possibly go deeper on this topic in that video. But so far, if you like the content, you should like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Also follow my Instagram too, that would be greatly appreciated. You guys can always reach out and just show me some love, it's all good. Now with the major label backing him, it was time for Chamillionaire's music to be heard worldwide. I remember as a kid hearing the name Chamillionaire and it instantly stood out to me. It's funny because I envisioned a Chamillionaire being bigger than a billionaire or something dealing with money, but however, this is completely false because the name Chamillionaire has nothing to do with money according to the man himself. Chamillionaire's old rap name used to be Chameleon. When he was a kid, he used to draw a black superhero and the logo that he has today was the logo for the superhero. Back when Chamillionaire and Paul Wall were really tight, Paul Wall was really good at relationships, with him being a very social guy, while Chamillionaire was what many people would deem antisocial. While Paul was social, Chamillionaire said that it was him who had the information. This is why they worked well together when you put Paul's ability to build relationships combined with Chamillionaire's knowledge. When Paul Wall and Chamillionaire split, it made Chamillionaire nervous because now he had to make himself better at relationships. In a freestyle one day, Chamillionaire rapped that he was changing his rap name from Akeem to Chamillionaire, and the name stuck. He just essentially added the A-I-R-E to the end of his rap name at the time, which was Chameleon. The A-I-R-E in Chameleon stands for about information in relationships. So his name has a deeper meaning than money and being a chameleon blending into his environment and having his verses stand out. I should also mention that in 2018, Chamillionaire responded to a hilarious tweet from Cole Sprouse. In the tweet, Cole Sprouse said that he was confused about whether the name Chamillionaire was because of how much money that he had or because he owns millions of chameleons. In response to this, Chamillionaire would say that the name derives from the backward spelling of Aryan Ole Mak. I have no clue if I said that right, but he said that this basically translates to the truth teller in the Wakandan language. So yes, very deep meaning indeed. But back to the music side of things, in September of 2005, the first single for Chamillionaire's debut album was released. This would be the song Turn It Up featuring Lil Flip. The song would peak at number 41 on the Billboard Hot 100. What some people might not know is that The Sound of Revenge went gold off of the strength of one single, which was this single. The album went gold in December of 2005, which was 2 months after its release. The next single, which we all know was Ridin', didn't get pushed until 2006, I believe, which would end up up propelling the album to platinum in May of 2006. Essentially, Turn It Up would really be the calm before the storm because Chamillionaire's next single would absolutely change his career and have his place in pop culture.
With a new chick, she like cola. Next to the PlayStation controller is a full clip in my pistola. Send a jacker into a coma.
Ridin' would essentially debut at number 88 on the charts, but 8 weeks later, it would move from number 12 to number 4, where it would stay for 2 weeks. Eventually, the song would peak at number 1 and stayed there for 2 straight weeks. That song ultimately stayed on the charts for 31 weeks. This song was also the best-selling ringtone in 2006 with 3.2 million buys. At the 49th Annual Grammy Awards, Ridin' won Best Rap Performance by a Duo or a Group and received a nomination for Best Rap Song. As of today, the song is 4 times platinum. What some might not know is that the song was inspired by UGK, with them notably releasing an album in 1996 called Ridin' Dirty. I mean, I can go on and on about this song, but those from that era know how huge this song was and still is to this day. Chamillionaire in an interview said that the song Ridin' took $4,000 to make as opposed to Turn It Up, which cost about $250,000 to make. I should also add that in a separate interview, he said that the Scott Storch beat, which was the song Turn It Up, was about $125,000, so take that as you will. The reason why the label wanted Scott Storch is because Universal Records were thinking big and they wanted to get Scott Storch to produce a song for Chamillionaire because at the time, Scott Storch was the man and they thought that he could put out a hit. To have Scott Storch produce your song at the time was big money compared to Playing Skills, who produced Ridin', which performed better on the charts. How Krayzie Bone ended up on the track is because Chamillionaire thought that he was a star and grew up on his music. Krayzie Bone has a phenomenal verse on the song that I cannot imagine him not being on it. Even though the song went on to be a mega hit, the label at first did not like the song. They didn't even want to put it out as a single. Chamillionaire also added that at the time, singles cost a lot of money to make. He would further say, "My first single cost me like $150,000 for the beat, and they wanted me to go spend $250,000 on a Timbaland beat, and I wouldn't do it. Then they were forced to have to put out the song that I wanted, which was Ridin'. That didn't cost that much to make, and then it just went to the world. I remember being in Jamaica and all the kids were screaming the song. It was just everywhere I was going because everybody had that relationship with the police, and I was just like, okay, we got something here." I can't necessarily blame the label for not believing the song would be a hit because Krayzie Bone even said that he didn't really think that the song would become a hit. But Krayzie Bone saying this can mainly be attributed to him never thinking that the song would ever even come out because he laid his verse for the song over a year before it actually came out. But the Sign of Revenge album would release in November of 2005. The album would peak at number 10 on the US Billboard 200 chart, selling 130,000 copies in its first week. As of today, the album is platinum. So with the release of Ridin' in his debut album, those things would completely change Chamillionaire's career in the mainstream. 2006 would end up being a very big year for Chamillionaire because Ridin' would be pushed and blow up this year. Chamillionaire did end up featuring on a couple big songs. One of them would be Frankie J's song That Girl, which featured Mannie Fresh and Chamillionaire. The song would peak at number 43 on the Billboard Hot 100. The other big song that Chamillionaire would appear on this year is Ciara's song Get Up. This song would end up peaking at number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. No album came this year, but Chamillionaire would release 2 mixtapes. He would release Military Therapy at a point in the year, and he would also release the sequel to Mixtape Messiah as well. I should also mention that Chamillionaire would feature on the song King Kong by Jibbs, which ended up peaking at number 54 on the Billboard Hot 100. 2007 would come around, and now Chamillionaire was gearing up to drop his sophomore album. But first, he would start off the year by featuring on one of my favorite childhood songs, Doughboy Fresh by 3 6 Mafia. I love that song to death, and Chamillionaire would absolutely murder his verse, just floated over the beat.
I'm the man to respect, I'm demanding respect, or I'm commanding that cannon through that damage to chest.
The song would end up peaking at number 54 on the Billboard Hot 100. Months after this, in July 2007, Chamillionaire would drop the 3rd installment in the Mixtape Messiah series. The same month that Mixtape Messiah 3 released was when Chamillionaire would drop the first single for his sophomore album. This single would be Hip Hop Police featuring Slick Rick. Speaking on the record, Chamillionaire would say, "I try to do a lot of records like that on the album that are still jamming records but still have social commentary on them. The Hip Hop Police record is like a Murder Was the Case record record. It's really a concept record. Most records now are dance records or for the club. It's so much of that I need to go a different direction. I think that's why I decided to come with Hip Hop Police. Slick Rick has always been one of those guys really good at telling stories. That's what we're doing, telling a story about a murder. The metaphor means nowadays just loving hip hop and being a rapper and loving music is the same as committing a murder. With all the controversy surrounding rap, that's what the record is about. So this is the direction that Chamillionaire went with the record, and although a great song, it failed to chart on the Billboard Hot 100. A week before the song would release, Chamillionaire would do an interview with MTV and spoke about his sophomore album. He would say that with his sophomore album, this was the first time that he actually finished his album. With his debut album, he was still working, and the only material that wound up on the album is what he recorded. So it sounds like he recorded 16 tracks for his debut album and all of them made it. This is different compared to his sophomore album, where he said that he recorded 2 albums worth of material and had a lot to pick from to make an album. Hip Hop Police was the only single released prior to his sophomore album. The other 2 singles, The Bill Collector and Industry Groupie, failed to chart. Ultimately, Chamillionaire's sophomore album Ultimate Victory would release in September of 2007, peaking at number 8 on the Billboard 200, selling 79,000 copies in its first week. 2 things that I noticed about this album is that Chamillionaire didn't use any profanity or swear on this album. The other thing is that Playing Skills, who produced a good portion of his first album, only produced 1 song on this album, and that was the Bill Collector song featuring Crazy Bone. To this date, this is the last album that Chamillionaire has ever released. After Ultimate Victory, there were plans for another Chamillionaire album while he was on Universal. This album was supposed to be titled Venom. The one big song that was supposed to be on Venom was the song Good Morning, which was released in October of 2009. The song would end up peaking at number 40 on the Billboard Hot 100. As we know now, the Venom album ended up being scrapped. When questioned about it in 2009, Chamillionaire would say, "My album will be dropping 4th quarter this year, and as far as Venom, I just decided to scrap it. I know there were rumors and conspiracy theories and maybe it was a Universal Records thing and they didn't like it, but that's not true. The fact is, they were even surprised when I made the announcement and were like, why are you telling people that? But I just made it known that I wasn't going to drop Venom because I had already made up my mind, if I'm going to drop a body of work that I feel confident in, I want to drop it in the way I want to drop it." As I started putting the project together, people started coming in and getting more excited because time is nearing for all of us to come together as a major label, and they started coming in making the little tweaks to it. So I'm cool with that, and you have to deal with that because at the end of the day, your label is your boss, but then they started tweaking it a little bit too much and it starts changing the concept. I was like, nah man, from a creative standpoint, I got to say no. Chamillionaire has spoken on Universal wanting him to take the pop route on Venom, which he obviously wasn't feeling. Ultimately, in 2011, he would finally part ways with Universal. Him and the label just had 2 different visions, with them wanting him to be something that he wasn't comfortable being because it was not him. In an interview with Billboard about him leaving Universal, he would say that the situation got to the point where he refused to put out a project if it wasn't going to be right. But ultimately, Chamillionaire ended up getting out of his deal, and as part of him leaving, Universal told him that he could not take any of the music that he recorded while on the label, which he was perfectly fine with. Before moving forward, I would like to talk about a story Chamillionaire has told about his time while he was on Universal. It was fellow rapper Nelly who taught Chamillionaire what an audit was. For those who don't know what an audit is, by definition, it's an official inspection of an individual's or organization's account, typically by an independent body. After learning from Nelly what this was, Chamillionaire would find Jay-Z's auditor. This auditor would say that he was not going to charge Chamillionaire up front, and instead he was going to take a percentage. This auditor would go on to find $600,000 that Universal hid from Chamillionaire. This is also how Chamillionaire said that he got off of Universal, because he threatened that he would teach all of their artists how to do an audit, which would have costed them a lot of money. Now with him off of the label, he decided to take the independent route. His strategy with this was to gain the confidence of the consumers by giving content directly to fans and applying his innovative ways to make money. To some people's disappointment, I won't really talk about his music in the 2010s. Instead, I wanted to focus on Chamillionaire's shift to the tech industry. Why Chamillionaire would shift his focus from the music industry to tech is because he saw the way that a lot of businesses were quote-unquote cannibalizing the music industry. For a rapper, jumping into the tech world can be kind of intimidating, but upon learning more about it, Chamillionaire would learn that there was something special going on. He would start advising for a company. One of the things that he would do was if the company needed to get in touch with Chris Brown, for example, he would help them. Chamillionaire became so valuable to the company that they decided to give him advisory shares. By definition, an advisory share is a form of non-cash equity compensation given to advisors in exchange for their time and expertise, strategic insights, experience, and network. Advisory shares are a type of equity ownership that doesn't come with voting rights or a stake in the company's profits. This company would go on to be bought by Google, and in turn, Chamillionaire made money. This really changed everything for him because he was thinking about all of the foolish things that rappers do. Buying chains, making it rain at the strip club, and just flat out wasting money. But this made Chamillionaire want to venture deeper into the tech world. One of the earliest things that Chamillionaire invested in was Maker Studios. This company was launched in 2009, and Chamillionaire would be an early investor. In 2014, Disney acquired the YouTube multi-channel network for $700 million according to Forbes. Chamillionaire's $1.5 million investment reportedly earned him a return on investment, or ROI, of over $200 million according to the Black Wall Street Times. Another company Chamillionaire would invest in is Cruise. This is an American self-driving car company headquartered in San Francisco, California that was founded in 2013. In 2016, General Motors would acquire the company for over $1 billion according to Forbes. I'm going to keep it coming because Lyft was another company that he was an early investor in before the company went public. As of the time I'm making this video, Lyft as a company has a market cap or net worth of almost $4 billion. Ring is something else that Chamillionaire was on early, and in 2018, that company was sold to Amazon for over $1 billion. I would like to mention that in 2015, Chamillionaire was named the entrepreneur in residence at Upfront Ventures. This is a venture capital firm that focuses on early stage technology companies. In 2009, Chamillionaire would meet Mark Suster, who's a managing partner of Upfront Ventures. The two would meet at a tech conference in LA. Mark saw Chamillionaire on stage at the event talking about how he used social media to engage audiences. This was back in 2009, and Chamillionaire's understanding of audience engagement was far beyond anything that Mark was hearing from most people at that time. So this is the backstory of how they met. In 2018, Chamillionaire would be a co-founder of the company Convos. This is an online social networking service that focuses on creating public collaborative conversations through video. Here's what Mark Suster had to say about Chamillionaire and the app. So of course, when Cam wanted to build his own startup, I was first in line asking to fund him. In creating Combos, I have watched Cam literally dissect every screen interface, UX navigation, social integration, etc. He has embodied the typical founder journey you would expect from any dropout kid from Stanford or Harvard. I would put him high on the list of startup founders who have a deep knowledge of the users they serve, what is unique about their app, and how to build a product for scale. If you really want to learn more about the tech part of Chamillionaire's career, I would highly suggest that you go read up on it because I found it very interesting and insightful. Chamillionaire is a living legend. He was already popping and eating well before he ever signed a major record deal. Upon signing this deal, he would release one of the most iconic songs of the 2000s, which is Ridin'. Throughout the years, I have seen people call him a one-hit wonder, which to me is a little bit unfair to say. Ridin' is a song that everyone knows, but Chamillionaire had a top 40 song in Good Morning. Turn It Up went gold and narrowly missed out on the top 40 of the Billboard Hot 100. This is just him as a leading artist because, as mentioned earlier, he did appear on Get Up by Sierra, which peaked at number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 and is now platinum, so that's definitely a hit if you want to say that. At the same time, if true, it doesn't really matter because Chamillionaire made his mark in the music industry and went on to do bigger and better things in the tech world. Of course, while he was venturing in the tech industry, he was still making music because it's something that he loves to do. Going into the tech industry was a smart move. I mean, just ask Nas, who just like Chamillionaire was an early investor in Ring and reportedly received over $40 million when the company was bought by Amazon. But just like Nas, some people don't even know that Chamillionaire made the transition into tech, and this was very evident when he was at the NBA Finals in 2017. Chamillionaire would go viral because people were questioning how he could afford front row seats. These people must have assumed that he was broke and his rap money had dried up, but little did they know he was investing in companies that went on to sell for millions or even billions of dollars. The last thing I want to talk about regarding Chamillionaire is his Michael Jordan story. I know I'll probably get comments about this, but I feel like me telling the story will not do it justice. Go watch the video. You can easily find it on YouTube and look it up because it's a wild story. All in all, let me know what you thought of this video. I love you guys with all my heart. Peace.